Elizabeth Warren. She's going to introduce the Accountable Capitalism Act. Now, when a radical socialist wants to introduce the Accountable Capitalism Act, you better worry a lot. Whatever happened to the Accountable Government Act? This is from the Washington Examiner. Senator Elizabeth Warren will introduce legislation aimed at making the nation's largest companies accountable to employees and their local communities, not just shareholders. Excuse me? You know what a company is, folks? It is a legal creation that is run by individuals, where individuals work and other individuals invest in the company. It's about property rights. It's about entrepreneurship. It's about wealth creation. It's about commerce and trade. Government has no role whatsoever. Accountability to your community? Tell me, when's the last time the IRS was held to account to your community? When's the last time the Department of Agriculture was held to account to your community? When's the last time the Department of Housing and Urban Development was held to account to your community? And go through all the departments and agencies. So we're now going to, through the back door, through populist propaganda, nationalize big chunks of the private sector. That shift, she wrote at the Wall Street Journal, had a tremendous effect on the economy because she says companies in the late 20th century started operating in a way that made them slaves to shareholders. Now, do any of you have a private pension? Any of you have mutual funds, a 401k, an IRA? Mr. Producer, you have anything? You have a 401. Are you a multimillionaire, billionaire? No. You got a wife and 2 kids, and you have to break your back to earn a living in New York, don't you? And so does your wife. And you put a little bit of money away in a private pension plan, right? And those private pension plans invest in companies. So when you retire, you'll have more money. Capitalism already redistributes wealth. Capitalism already attracts investment. Capitalism is for all the people. Rich, poor, middle class. We can use all the Marxist propaganda. But she writes, the shift has had a tremendous effect on the economy. In the early 1980s, large American companies sent less than half their earnings to shareholders, spending the rest on their employees and other priorities. Employees and other priorities? Companies need to hire people in order to make profits. That's a priority. And you want to make a profit in order to attract voluntary capital investment. But between 2007 and 2016, large American companies dedicated 93% of their earnings to shareholders. Where does that come from? But even if they do, you're a shareholder. If you have a 401k or an IRA, if you have any kind of pension whatsoever, you're a shareholder. You, the American people. Who the hell else is a shareholder? I'll be right back. Now, let's not speed by this. Elizabeth Warren says to give employees, communities, and other stakeholders a leg up. Her bill would require companies with more than $1 billion in annual revenue to obtain a federal corporate charter. So now, in order to function, you would need a federal corporate charter. That charter would require corporate directors to, quote, consider the interests of all major corporate stakeholders, not only shareholders in company decisions. Shareholders could sue if they believe directors weren't fulfilling those obligations. Her bill would also let employees elect at least 40% of the company's directors, and at least 75% of the directors and shareholders would have to sign off on decisions to spend money on politics. I thought we lived in America. I thought if you start a business and you start a company and it becomes wildly successful and you employ all kinds of people and provide products and services that people want, that's a good thing. But apparently it's not good enough. For the past 30 years, she wrote, we've put the American stamp of approval on giant corporations. No, we haven't. We've put the American stamp of approval on massive government. She writes, even as they have ignored the interests of all but a tiny slice of Americans, we should insist on a New Deal. This, of course, would be a pickaxe at the heart of capitalism, where now the federal government, politicians, and bureaucrats would substitute their priorities, their personal policy decisions, for that of a private institution. And the funny thing about these big companies, any of us can own a piece of them. Any of us can invest in them. Any of us. That's why you have mutual funds. That's why you have your 401k or your IRA or whatever it is. The government can't even keep track of its own money. Wastes over $125 billion a year. The government stole all the money out of the Social Security and Medicare trust funds. Stole all the money out of the Highway Trust Fund. The government lies on its books about the actual state of the government's finances. All unfunded liabilities are not shown on the government's in the government's documents. And now, it's not enough to tax the companies. It's not enough to regulate the companies. It's not enough to have IRS agents in these companies, and they are full-time. It's not enough to have the EEOC and OSHA and you name it. And that's just the feds. You got the states, too. Warren, who has absolutely no experience running anything, has an abstract idea. This is redistribution of wealth. She would take the assets and resources of a corporation and say, okay, you got to give to the community. Well, what does that mean? It means whenever the Democrats control Congress and the presidency, they will have a say in how these companies run themselves. This is absolutely frightening. And every day and every night they come up with one cockamamie idea after another. One cockamamie idea after another. We've created the wealthiest nation on the face of the earth, not just for the richest among us, but for all of us. And look what they call the Accountable Capitalism Act. Capitalism is nothing more than individuals making decisions about how they want to live. That's it. What you want to become, how much you hope to make, what you want to do with your money, whether you want to save it or spend it, what do you want to spend it on, how do you want to save it, what do you want to do with your resources? That's your money. That's capitalism. The individuals make the choice. She would substitute individual decision-making for her decision-making because that's the bottom line. It's all centralized, and they always do it in the populist name, for the people. It's for the people. I want to make sure the community's taken care of, and the unions are taken care of, and the employees are taken care of. And there's taken care of. All about government. It's always about government. The Accountable Capitalism Act, the very reprobates who run for office and get elected, the politicians, the bureaucrats don't have enough power, but they'd get more. And then when you have an issue that has to be decided, all of a sudden you got to go into federal court. They want to drag the private sector into their hell. And where's the constitutional basis for this? Can anybody tell us? Where is the constitutional basis for this? Is it anywhere? Where's the authority for this? Well, it doesn't exist, but they don't care. They don't care.